Welcome to the True Guy Globe Brief Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. After World War II, millions of American soldiers returned home to parades and reunions. But George Blake's story was different. He was a young man from Ohio who fought bravely in the Philippines. When the war ended, his ship and family waited for him. But George refused to leave. He stayed behind, not as a soldier, but as a man searching for something lost. This isn't a story of medals or battles, but of what comes after the fighting stops. In a remote Luzon village, George's choice became legend. He found belonging and family in the most unexpected place. George traded the American dream for a life of purpose, woven into a community that embraced him. News of his decision confused the military and broke his family's heart. They couldn't understand what he found there: kindness, resilience, and a connection deeper than any order to return. George's story challenges our ideas of duty and happiness. Is home comfort and familiarity, or is it the need to be part of something greater? He found purpose not on battlefields, but in the quiet struggles and triumphs of village life. George chose community over country, connection over comfort. In doing so, he became a testament to the power of a single, selfless life. George Blake was just a boy from Ohio when he enlisted, ready to serve his country. The Philippines was a brutal battlefield, and fighting alongside the Filipino resistance changed him forever. When the war ended, most soldiers dreamed of home. But for George, leaving felt like betrayal. He saw devastated villages and orphaned children and felt a responsibility beyond military duty. His commanding officer was stunned. "You want to stay? The war is over." But George's war felt unfinished. The struggle for survival had just begun. He wanted to help rebuild, to give back to those who had lost everything. With no plan or permission, only conviction, he refused his ticket home. To his fellow soldiers, he was an enigma. Why trade a hero's welcome for hardship? As the last ship disappeared, George felt loneliness, but also purpose. He was no longer Private Blake of the U.S. Army, just George, a man standing on a dusty road in a country that had captured his heart. His choice wasn't about rejecting home, but embracing a new one. He became a symbol of hope for a village in need. George's decision was recorded as an anomaly, but for him, it was the beginning of a new life. He chose to stay, not out of obligation, but out of love for the people and land that had changed him. His story spread quietly, a whisper of courage and conviction. George's presence would soon transform the village in ways no one could have predicted. He was ready to build, to heal, and to belong. The journey ahead would test him, but he had already made the most important choice. He stayed. With the army gone, George was truly on his own. He wandered into a small village where he met Andres, a boy wise beyond his years, and his mother, Elena. Elena eyed the American with suspicion, but kindness needs no translator. She offered him a bowl of rice and fish, likely most of what she had. George repaid their hospitality by helping with repairs, clearing debris, and fetching water. He worked without asking for anything, his actions speaking louder than words. Suspicion softened into acceptance. Elena began leaving food for him each evening. Andres, once shy, followed George everywhere, teaching him the ways of the village as George taught him English. A bond formed, an unlikely family, bound by shared loss and quiet understanding. The village watched, wary at first, but soon saw George's genuine affection and tireless work. He became part of their rhythm, rising with the sun, sharing stories by firelight. George was no longer an outsider, he was becoming one of them. In this new world, he found the beginnings of home. The war's end was distant news in the village. Real work was just beginning. George made his choice. He would not return to Ohio. This village was now home. He traded his uniform for a farmer's clothes and learned to plant rice, fish, and navigate jungle trails. Life was hard, food was scarce, comforts were gone, but George felt fulfillment he'd never known. He embraced the spirit of Bayanihan, the unity that bound the village together. Some villagers remained wary, questioning his motives. Why would an American choose this life? George knew trust had to be earned. He responded with action, not words. He volunteered for the toughest jobs, helped rebuild homes, carried the sick, and shared his knowledge. Slowly he won them over, one person at a time. The whispers of doubt faded, replaced by respect. George was no longer the strange American. He was Georgie, their own. He became a neighbor, a friend, a son. His hands, once trained for war, now built and healed. The village's strength became his own. George's presence was no longer questioned, it was cherished. He had found a place where he was needed. In the struggle and simplicity, he discovered true belonging. The village was his family, and George was home. Years passed, and George became an integral part of the village. His identity as an American soldier faded. He was now a farmer, builder, and friend. He worked alongside the villagers, learning their songs and stories, finding joy in the rhythm of daily life. George helped rebuild the community hall, making it sturdier for storms. The hall became the heart of the village again, a place for gatherings and shelter. His bond with Andres and Elena deepened into true family. He looked after Elena as a son and became a father figure to Andres, teaching him to read and write. In turn, Andres taught George the secrets of the jungle and their culture. George was no longer just living in the village, he was helping to build its future. Here, he was known and needed. His contributions were visible every day, in stronger roofs, fuller rice baskets, and children's laughter. He found wealth not in possessions, but in the love and respect of his community. George had lost a country but gained a world. Life in the village was a cycle of hardship and resilience, and George faced it all with his adopted family. Monsoons threatened their homes and crops, but together they rebuilt, growing stronger with each storm. The deepest sorrow came with Elena's passing. The village mourned, and George grieved as if losing his own mother. He became the guardian of Andres, their bond now unbreakable. Then, a powerful earthquake struck, collapsing buildings and damaging the community hall. Panic gripped the village, but George's calm leadership guided them through. He organized search parties, checked on the vulnerable, and set up a temporary camp. His steady presence turned him into a pillar of strength. The earthquake took much, but could not break their spirit. Together, they began the slow process of rebuilding. George worked tirelessly, his hands raw, his body aching. He knew this was what it meant to be family. You don't run when things get hard. You stay. You hold on. You rebuild. Through every hardship, George's place in the village grew stronger. He was no longer just a helper. He was their anchor. The spirit of the village, and of George, held firm. After the earthquake, George saw a new need: education. He started a small informal school in the damaged community hall, gathering children around him. With patience and kindness, he taught them reading, writing, arithmetic, and English. He used stones for counting, banana leaves for blackboards, and charcoal for chalk. His classroom had no walls, but it was a place of magic and discovery. George became Lolo Georgie, Grandpa George, the beloved village teacher. He taught not just from books but from life, birds, weather, respect, and compassion. He was shaping the next generation, instilling resilience and community. Through teaching, George found new purpose. He saw understanding dawn in a child's eyes and knew he was making a lasting difference. He had come as a soldier, stayed as a builder, and became a teacher, a builder of futures. This was the most rewarding chapter of his life. The seeds he planted would blossom for years to come. For decades, George Blake's story was known only to his village. He lived simply, content with his choices, never seeking recognition. But stories like his find their way into the light. In the early 2000s, a journalist discovered George, now an old man with kind eyes. The article about his life struck a chord, and soon others came to hear his story. Donations helped build a schoolhouse and clinic. The government recognized his contributions. George remained unchanged by fame, gracious but overwhelmed by attention. His greatest joy was in the quiet moments, seeing children he taught become leaders, sharing meals with Andres, and listening to the village at dusk. The world saw him as a hero, but to himself, he was just a man who followed his heart. He found paradise not in comfort, but in meaning and connection. His reward was the life he built and the love he shared. George's story became a beacon of selfless love and unconventional choices. His legacy was not in medals, but in the lives he touched. That was his true reward. George Blake passed away peacefully, surrounded by his village family. He was laid to rest on the hill beside Elena, overlooking the homes and fields he helped build. His grave is simple, a wooden cross carved by Andres' son, inscribed, "Our brother, our teacher, our Lolo." His legacy lives on in the schoolhouse, in stories told to children, and in the spirit of community he nurtured. George's life teaches us that home is not a place on a map, but where you are loved and where you belong. He found purpose by giving himself to others. His story is a quiet rebellion against the idea that we must live where we are born. What does home mean to you? What does it mean to live a life of purpose? George's journey reminds us that ordinary people can make extraordinary choices. He chose compassion over comfort, presence over protocol. His legacy is a timeless reminder. The most profound acts of courage are often the quietest, and a life of love and service never fades away.